From mysterious rooms to strange statues and even remarkable treasures, today I'm counting down 15 of the weirdest things found in caves. Let's start with number 15, a World War II base. In February of 2024, hikers in Myanmar discovered what is believed to be an old World War II base. It's located high in the hills near the country's border with India. This base is inside of a cave, and it's complete with circular symbols, English abbreviations, and numerical carvings. Local accounts corroborate the idea that it was a transit camp, and its likely purpose was to stock and protect rations and equipment needed for the war effort against Japan. Number 14. Viking Treasure. Dunmore Cave is a popular tourist spot in Ireland, and in December of 1999, a hoard of 43 silver and bronze items was discovered in a rocky cleft deep in the cave. Found by a tourist guide, they seemed to date back to the year 970 AD and were likely the personal belongings of a wealthy individual. And if that wasn't cool enough, the cave was also the site of a Viking battle in 928 AD, making it a very historically significant place. Number 13. Ancient Sharks. Mammoth Cave is famous for having over 600 kilometers of passageways, and while its home state of Kentucky is landlocked, millions of years ago it was completely underwater. It's because of this that in January of 2024, 2 ancient sharks were unearthed in its caverns. Believed to have been the approximate length of a Fiat 500, the 2 sharks are from different species, although they were likely quite similar in the way that they hunted and behaved. Number 12. Antarctic Stairs. Antarctica is a landmass that's known for being very cold and virtually devoid of human settlement. However, in 2019, a cave was discovered that seemed to have an entrance with a set of human-built stairs. Found on Greenwich Island with the help of Google Earth, conspiracy theorists believe it could be anything from a top-secret military base to the remains of an ancient civilization. And while the far more likely cause is that the forces of wind and water caused it, the reality is that it's impossible to know for certain. Number 11. A new species. In May of 2024, an entirely new species was found inside northern Australia's Totem Pole Cave. This species is a translucent crustacean with protruding teeth and large claws, and in total about 80 of them were found swimming around in one of the cave's ponds. However, what makes this species impressive is that its length of 4 millimeters makes it the smallest crustacean of its kind on the planet, and in all likelihood, a lot more research is going to have to be done to find out more about this incredible creature. Number 10. Hobbits. Okay, so while Homo sapiens may be the only member of the Homo genus around today, in the early years of Homo sapien history, we shared the planet with fellow subspecies. For years, we thought we knew all of them. However, on September 2nd of 2003, the remains of a new Homo species were found in a cave on the Indonesian island of Flores. At the time, a joint Australian-Indonesian team of archaeologists were looking for evidence of the original migration of modern humans from Asia to Australia. What they instead found was nearly a complete small-statured skeleton. Even though the specimen was an adult, it stood at just 1 meter tall, and soon scientists got to work determining whether the specimen was simply suffering from a disease that left it short or was part of a different subspecies. Further research seemed to indicate that the latter was true, and the subspecies was therefore named Homo floresiensis in honor of the island that it was found on. Naturally, they were also quickly nicknamed Hobbits, and soon scientists began to further scope out the area. They soon found the remains of other species, and after intensive research, it was determined that they inhabited the island about 50,000 years ago, likely dying out just before or at the time when Homo sapiens arrived on the island. This makes them one of the last early human species to go extinct. It's also worth mentioning that despite their small size, they were quite similar to modern humans in regard to their other faculties. After all, they stood upright and appeared to be about as smart as we are. In fact, there is evidence that their prefrontal cortex was a similar size and that they exhibited advanced behaviors such as the use of fire, butchering, and stone tool manufacturing. They also had more robust leg bones, likely preyed on giant rats on the island, and according to many researchers, likely went extinct either directly or indirectly thanks to human competition. Number 9. The Peking Man. Before Homo sapiens came Homo erectus, a now extinct subspecies. This archaic form of human was quite similar to us, although it had a somewhat lower brain function, was smaller in stature, and had an elongated face more similar to that of the Neanderthal. Yet despite those limitations, it was an apex predator in its habitat and is believed to have gone extinct, not thanks to us Homo sapiens, but rather due to the effects of climate change. However, other theories such as disease and inbreeding with other hominid species may provide a better explanation. Interestingly, it's thanks to a cave discovery that we understand this subspecies as well as we do today. The story goes that in 1927, Western archaeologists began exploring the cave system of Zucudian in search of hominid remains. After 2 years of work in 1929, an anthropologist discovered a surprisingly complete skull cap. This led to further research on this subspecies, and soon the Peking man became one of China's premier archaeological finds. Over time, more remains were discovered. However, in 1941, the original fossils were lost. That story goes that due to the threat of a Japanese invasion, an attempt was made to smuggle Homo erectus remains out of China and into the United States. However, while en route, the ship they were in was attacked by Japanese warships and ran aground. The remains have been lost ever since, and now only plaster casts remain. This weird discovery is also notable for having a very strong cultural impact. You see, during the Mao era, the Chinese government propagated the belief that labor created humanity. More specifically, it had been posited by Friedrich Engels that walking upright, instead of on all fours as the other apes did, freed the hands for labor. This in turn facilitated the evolution of all characteristically human traits, such as language, cooperation, and most importantly, the growth of the brain size. As such, the Chinese government spread the idea that the Peking man was a stage of development as per this theory. This was then tied to the ideas of primitive communism, and it was this complete package of shaky science and ideology that was widely taught in Chinese schools in order to further ingrain communist teachings into the minds of the people. Number 8. Ancient coins. Alexander the Great was one of the most epic rulers to ever live. Hailing from modern-day Macedonia, he formed a kingdom that stretched from Greece to the far-off lands of northwestern India. As you might imagine, this allowed him to dominate trade in the region, and Alexander the Great's coins soon spread far and wide. One of the locations they spread to was what is now the state of Israel, and it's here that an interesting treasure trove was found inside of a cave. The story goes that a certain Henzakai was exploring inside one of the most well-hidden stalactite caves in northern Israel when he came across a shiny object. Upon further inspection, he found 2 ancient silver coins from the time of Alexander the Great stashed inside a nook. It was clear by their location that they were meant to be hidden. However, due to them instead being hoarded here, they now give us an insight into the past. The coins were found alongside pieces of silver jewelry such as rings, bracelets, and earrings, all of which was originally inside a now disintegrated cloth pouch. And while figuring out the exact date when these objects were buried is tricky, the coins allowed historians to get pretty close. You see, the most recent coin in the hoard tells us about the very earliest point at which the valuables could have been hidden. After doing some analysis, experts believe that they were likely stashed in the cave by local residents fleeing during a period of political unrest stemming from the passing of Alexander. In such a dangerous environment, it was sensible to hide your valuables away from warring armies, many of whom tended to loot and plunder wherever they went. It is also worth mentioning that these valuables weren't the only cool things found in the cave. That's because when officials were sent to investigate the site, the expedition found objects from even earlier dates in antiquity. For example, they found artifacts in the cave that date to the Chalcolithic period, the early Bronze Age, the Biblical period, and the Hellenistic period. This in turn makes this otherwise unassuming cave a hub of cultural importance. Moving on to number 7, the Waitomo Glowworm Caves. So while it is normal to find worms underground, this massive colony of glowing worms found at the Waitomo Glowworm Caves is incredibly unique. It's located in New Zealand. This cave was first discovered by the local Maori indigenous peoples in the late 1700s. However, it was until 1884 that they were first revealed to the Western world. In 1887, 3 men conducted a series of thorough explorations, entering in on a tiny raft from an above-ground stream. They lit their candles and descended into the depths. They were soon amazed when through the darkness they noticed these star-like lights scattered across the cave. These lights were caused by a species of glowworms. Now, it should be noted that they aren't worms in the traditional sense. Rather, they're the larvae of fungus gnats, which cling to the rock walls and hunt with long strings of sticky mucus. However, because of their bioluminescence, they light up the cave with a bluish-green light, making for an incredible sight. So as you might imagine, the glowworms piqued their curiosity, and the three men would return many times to explore further. During this time period, Chief Tinnerow would, on an independent trip, find a land entrance to the cave, making it far easier for people to get in and out. In 1889, he and his wife ditched the water entrance and began leading tours into the cave through this land entrance, and to this date, it's the primary way to get in and out of this cave. Glowworms aside though, it's also worth noting that the cave itself is pretty impressive in its own right. The limestone in the cave was formed about 30 million years ago when the cave was still under the ocean, and today it consists of the compressed, fossilized remains of the corals, seashells, fish skeletons, and many other small marine organisms. Over 5 million years, these fossilized rocks have been layered upon each other and compressed to create limestones, and at certain points it's over 200 meters thick. If you want to visit the area for yourself, you can get a guided tour for a relatively reasonable price of about $45. So I'd say that a visit here makes for a great day trip while vacationing around New Zealand. Number 6. A group of bandits. When you think of organized crime, shady basements, back alleyways, dimly lit bars, and crooked casinos are probably what comes to mind. However, for some reason or another, a cave in Illinois was at one time a hotbed of criminal activity. This cave in question is a modest 17-meter wide opening that sits on the bank of the Ohio River. When a French explorer came across the cave in 1739, he dubbed the natural shelter Cavern dans la Roque. The literal translation in English is Cave in Rock, and this incredibly creative name has stuck to this day. Now, what makes this cave unique is that it has a fissure in the top which acts as a natural chimney. This makes it perfect for creating a fire and building an outdoor home. It didn't take long for local criminals to take note of this, and throughout the 1790s it became what historians as far back as the 1830s referred to as the ancient colony of horse thieves, counterfeiters, and robbers. You see, Cave in Rock was a base camp for a group of river pirates who would ambush flatboats carrying cargo down the Ohio. In time, this base expanded its operations, becoming a hiding place not just for pirates, but also the motley mix of bandits and fugitives who used the cave as a sort of hideout and hangout. However, the good, or should I say bad, times wouldn't last forever. In 1799, the whole operation was put to an end when a group of justice-minded vigilantes known as the Exterminators raided the cave and surrounded the area. From then on, it's unclear whether or not any other bandits set up shop, although if they did, they certainly didn't stay for long. By the mid-1800s, the cave had, in an ironic twist, been converted into a church. In time, this church was removed, and today, Cave in Rock is just that, an empty cave in a rock. While there is no longer much to see, it is still possible to visit here. In 1929, the area was turned into a state park, and today, both it and the now very small town of Cave in Rock are a few hours away from the cities such as Louisville and Nashville. But if you're looking to go here, keep in mind that it's in the proverbial middle of nowhere. After all, these cities are relatively close to the cave, but you'll still be in for a 3-hour drive each way. Number 5. Mammoth Bones. Now, I'd say that Paradise Cave truly lives up to its name. It's located in southern Poland. It was discovered in 1963 by 2 local students, and at the time, a fair bit of research was done. The researchers found a huge amount of animal bones and traces of Neanderthals having visited this place at least twice, suggesting that it may have been an important site. However, from then on, research more or less paused, and evidently, it didn't go far enough. That's because in February of 2024, hundreds of mammoth bones and prehistoric remains were found inside the cave. Upon further investigation, the remains of species such as the woolly rhino, mammoth, cave lion, cave bear, and horse were found, with this being in addition to a large number of reindeer antlers. In total, the researchers have documented roughly 200 large and well-preserved bones, although as time passes, more and more remains have been dug up. When asked about the dig, researchers from the University of Warsaw said that, quote, "What was striking was the size of the antlers. They're mostly preserved as a whole, but they are relatively small. We will study the whole collection of bones later on to identify if there are any cut marks or any other traces of human impact on the bones. What remains to be answered is whether the reindeer antlers and the biggest concentration of bones are connected with the Neanderthal occupation. Here we need to wait for radiocarbon datings to tell more." End quote. Well, yet even without the radiocarbon dating, the evidence seems to suggest that large human occupation was likely. After all, they went on to say that, quote, apart from the bones, we also found a large number of flint artifacts. They were found within the layers which were identified as representing Neanderthal occupation. We expected 2 to 3 pieces and ended up with over 100 flint artifacts, end quote. It is also worth noting that the cave is a beautiful place to visit in its own right. It was opened to the public in 1972. There's a 180-meter path that tourists are brought down in order to get an idea of what's inside the cave. After walking through an artificial 21-meter-long tunnel that acts as a lock for the cave's microclimate, you'll walk through various chambers that include huge boulders, translucent columns, massive stalactites, and even a small number of fossil of corals inside the walls. So if you're on a vacation in Poland and you'll want to see an incredible natural wonder, a visit to Paradise Cave is well worth it. Number 4. The Dead Sea Scrolls. So under normal conditions, parchment paper will rot away over the centuries. However, caves provide stable atmospheric conditions, and it's thanks to this that the Dead Sea Scrolls have withstood the test of time. Likely written by Jewish priests between the years 135 BCE and 73 CE, their discovery was pretty incredible. The story goes that in late 1946, Bedouin shepherd Mohammed el-Dahib, his cousin Jumma Muhammad, and friend Khalil Musa were exploring one of the so-called Qumran caves when they came across a jar filled with several scrolls. They immediately took them home, and eventually the family brought them to Bethlehem to be sold. After going through a few dealers, they eventually sold one for an unspecified amount and an additional 3 for a grand total of 7 Jordanian pounds, or the equivalent of about $400 today. In 1947, they were brought to the attention of John C. Trevor of the American Schools of Oriental Research, and after the end of the 1948 Arab-Israeli War in 1949, both Trevor and other academics began to seriously investigate the Qumran caves. From then until 1956, archaeologists began to come to the area en masse, and in time, 800 to 900 scrolls were recovered from a series of 12 caverns. Written in a mix of Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek, scholars were able to interpret them and divide them into 3 distinct categories. 40% of the scrolls belong to the first category, which consists of copies of texts from Hebrew scriptures. 30% come from the secondary category, which consists of Jewish scriptures that were not canonized in the Hebrew Bible. And the final 30% belong to the third category, which consists of the various rules and beliefs of specific sects within Judaism. However, there is one scroll in particular that's garnered a lot of attention, known as the Temple Scroll. The 8-meter by 15-centimeter parchments meticulously details how the priests wanted to destroy what they viewed as a corrupt Jerusalem and then build a new and pure temple in place of the old one. Well, in any case, this still leaves us with an obvious question. Why were these scrolls hidden in the first place? Well, we can look to the ancient Romans for the answer. You see, in 68 AD, they brutally put down a Jewish rebellion that was in the then Roman province of Judea. Fearing retribution, the Jews fleeing the Roman rampage hurriedly stuffed the documents into the Qumran caves for safekeeping. There is even evidence to suggest that there was once a fort in the area to protect the area's growing Jewish population. It's also worth noting that the parchments were so well preserved thanks to the area's geography. Due to Qumran's proximity to the Dead Sea, the area is dry, arid, and low in humidity. This has all contributed to their longevity, allowing the scrolls to be in incredible shape that they're in today. If you want to visit them though, most can be viewed at the Israel Museum, and in my opinion, they're a must-see on any trip to Jerusalem. But you may have to postpone it for a bit due to recent events. Number 3. A rainforest. Now, while caves are known for having creatures such as spiders, bats, and even axolotls, it's rare that any sort of greenery grows in their depths. Yet Songdung Cave is a strange but very notable exception to this rule. It's located in central Vietnam. For millennia, it was a complete mystery to the outside world. In 1991, that all changed when a local man by the name of Ho Kan stumbled across it while searching for agar wood. While he initially wanted to venture inside, he was discouraged after hearing the sound of rushing water and strong wind at the entrance. Not thinking much of it, he returned home and over time forgot about its exact location. This would have been the end of the story. However, by chance, he rediscovered it in 2008 while scavenging for food and took careful notes on how to get there. In 2009, Ho Kan brought 2 members of the British Cave Research Association to the cave in order to explore and document it, and the official survey yielded some incredible results. Untouched by human hands, Sondung turned out to be the world's largest natural cave. At a height of over 200 meters and a width of about 150 meters and a length of about 9 kilometers, this 1.6 million square meter cavern is absolutely massive. For reference, it's large enough to easily fill an entire New York City block inside, including skyscrapers. Yet what makes the cave so incredible is not that it's just large, it's also full of natural wonders. About 500,000 years ago, parts of the ceiling collapsed, creating skylights that allow sun to get into the cave. This sunlight has allowed trees and plants to take root, creating an incredible jungle below. Thanks to years of secluded evolution, it has its own endemic plants, monkeys, flying foxes, frogs, insects, and hares that are found nowhere else in the world. As a result, this cave is one of the most biologically unique places on the planet. The real showstopper here is the cave's geology. That's because it's home to a row of 70 to 90 meter stalagmites. That makes them some of the largest on the planet, and the ones at Sondung are so immense that they've been nicknamed the Great Wall of Vietnam. However, if you'd like a tour, you better be willing to pay up. You see, the cave is limited to just 1,000 visitors per year, and to date the Vietnamese government has given a monopoly on all the travel to the cave to a company called Oxalis Adventures. About $3,000 per ticket. The prices are pretty steep. However, for that price, you get to go on a guided 5-night, 6-day journey through the cave with as many necessities such as camping gear, boots, and food being included. And while this massive monopoly may seem unfair, in many ways having just one company administering tourism in the cave helps with conservation, and it ensures that high-quality standards are met. Well, in any case, the reviews for the tour are overwhelmingly positive, and I'd say a visit here is a must if you're traveling through that area of Vietnam. Number 2. Ancient Roman Statues. The Amalfi Coast. It's easily one of Italy's most famous tourist hotspots. It's located on the country's west coast, just south of the city of Naples. It's known for its azure waters, picturesque villages, and incredible views. One of the many sights along this incredible coastline is the island of Capri, and of all the things on the island, the Blue Grotto is the most famous. On the surface, it looks like a small, simple hole in the bedrock of the island, but if the sea is calm, you can sail into it and see some incredible sights. Unlike most sea caves, the Blue Grotto has both a small opening on the top and an underwater opening hidden from eyesight. This allows light to get in through both sources, and since the water openings filters out red, yellow, and orange light, the combined effect creates an incredible blue illuminating glow inside the water. As you might imagine, this 25-meter wide and 60-meter long grotto is an incredible place to visit, and it's because of this that humans have historically used it. First discovered during ancient Roman times, it became famous for serving as the personal swimming hole of Emperor Tiberius. In fact, he loved the area so much that in 26 AD, he moved to an imperial villa complex on the island that he had inherited from the Emperor Augustus. In Tiberius's time, though, the grotto was decorated with several statues of important religious figures, such as Triton and Neptune. However, once antiquity was over, those statues fell into the water, only to be forgotten. In fact, for centuries, the grotto was avoided by sailors and islanders because it was said to be inhabited by witches and monsters. And it was only in 1826 that it was re-explored by a German poet, August Kopisch. Word quickly spread, and soon Capri and the grotto became part of the Victorian-era Grand Tour of Europe that many noblemen and noble ladies embarked on. Yet, despite all the traffic inside the cave, it was only thanks to adventurous cave divers that they were rediscovered. The story goes that in 1963, a diver by the name of Gennaro Alberino confided to his lawyer friend Umberto Vuoto that he had discovered a statue from the Roman era on the seabed of the grotto. At a depth of about 22 meters, they noticed 2 statues. However, due to their lack of proper equipment, they were not able to properly record the discovery, leading to the media leaking it before they could claim the prize for it. From then on, further investigations have been made, and it's now been determined that there were at least 7 total statues in the grotto during its heyday, with one theory positing that there may have been a massive swarm of them. Now, while there are no above-water statues remaining in the cave, it is still possible to visit the Blue Grotto. But as of now, swimming there is officially forbidden, although there are some who swim out on their own after hours. There are tours that'll take you there on a rowboat, and while it is impossible to enter on a choppy and wavy day, you can row right in when it's calm and sunny. So if you're looking for a caving experience that's truly magical, you should take a trip to southern Italy and visit this incredible blue grotto. Number 1. An underground cinema. While Paris's catacombs are known for being rather dark, cold, and creepy, what they aren't known for is being an entertainment venue. Yet in September of 2004, police came across an entire theater complex in the middle of its halls. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, the Paris catacombs are an ossuary where human remains are kept. Now, it's located beneath the city in a series of ancient limestone mines. It was converted into what it is now in the 1780s and 90s. It consists of over 280 kilometers of tunnels. These catacombs are vast, and while a small 1.6 kilometer section is open to the public, large areas of it are technically off limits. However, if you know where to look, there are entrances to these closed-off areas. You see, Paris has a special set of so-called sports police, and in 2004, they allegedly stumbled across the complex while on a training exercise. The story goes that after entering the network through a drain, the officers came across a tarpaulin that said, "Building site, no access." When they peeked behind that, they found a tunnel with a desk and a CCTV camera set to automatically record those who entered. As they advanced forward, their movement triggered a tape of dogs barking. According to authorities, it was clearly designed to frighten people off. Yet despite this strange setup, the police continued down the tunnel. In time, it opened into a vast 400 square meter cave located about 18 meters underground. This cave had been converted into an underground amphitheater with terraces cut into the rock, even with chairs. These chairs faced a full-size cinema screen, which with the help of projection equipment and tapes could play movies. Upon further investigation, the police found a variety of films, ranging from 1950s film noir classics to more recent thrillers. Now, if that wasn't all wild enough, the smaller cave next door to it had been turned into an informal restaurant and bar. According to authorities, quote, there were bottles of whiskey and other spirits behind a bar, tables and chairs, and even a pressure cooker for making couscous, end quote. Well, as you might imagine, all of this intrigued the police, and they soon tried to get to the bottom of things. Their first order of business was figuring out how the city's electric grid was rigged to reach the amphitheater. According to police reports, the whole thing ran off a professionally installed electricity system, and there were at least 3 phone lines down there. However, when they returned, they saw that the phone and electricity lines had been cut, and a note was left lying in the middle of the floor saying, "Do not try to find us." Well, now the tricky part about this whole thing is figuring out who exactly us is. Thus far, the only clues lies in the complex walls. Painted with symbols ranging from Celtic crosses to Stars of David, the police believe that some sort of secret society likely ran the theater. However, the reality is nobody knows for sure. Yet what is abundantly clear is that the group is one of several secretive bands of so-called cataphiles. These are people who gain access to the tunnels through drains and ventilation shafts, mostly using these underground areas for things like parties and picnics. And while joining one of those groups might sound pretty cool, I highly caution against it. After all, getting caught in the catacombs comes with a €60 fine, and if you were to steal anything within them, you can expect to pay a larger fine of about €50,000 and spend between 3 to 4 years in prison. So don't go into the Paris catacombs, please. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you next time. Thank you to our channel members.